Welcome back to the class. In this lesson, we're going to design the second set of features, or the second section for features, whatever you want to call it. And we'll do it in a different way than the first one. Now, when you're designing a landing page like this, or any kind of presentation website, it's very important to vary the way you're displaying these features. And if you do that, you make sure you're keeping the user's interest alive, okay? Imagine having to display 30 features in a page. Now, if you take those 30 features and you dump them all into a list, for example, it's just going to be plain boring. No one's going to read through that. Instead, if you take 10 of them, you display them maybe in a grid with some icons like we did, and then you take the other another 10 and you display them further down the page in a different way, and then you take the last 10 and display them even further down the page, maybe with some accompanying images or illustrations. Well, that is a much better approach because it's gonna keep the user engaged, and the user is gonna digest that content much easier. So in this lesson, we're gonna use a different layout for the second set of features. Let's begin. Let's take a look at the wireframe to see exactly what we need to do. So we have this feature category with this description, and then 4 features. Now in the wireframe, I added this black box as a placeholder for an image. We can use an image here, or we can simply use the text. It's really up to us. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna copy all of these, all the text that is, and we're gonna paste it in our main design like so. But actually, before we do that, let's do a little bit of cleanup. I think it's really important that we work as cleanly as possible. So let's name this features, or actually features 1. And then you can go ahead and rename these groups as well. I'm not going to do that here because time is of the essence, but know that whenever you're creating a design, name your layers and groups accordingly, because it's just going to make your life much easier. All right. So now there are a couple of common elements that these two sets of features share. So we're also going to add a subtitle like so. So let me just bring that down. And the subtitle for this section is, if I remember correctly, iOS Magic. Now, to save time, copy properties, paste properties, copy properties, and paste properties. Cool. Now, let's make sure that this text is displayed on a maximum of 5 columns, just like that, and this one as well. And then let's select all of these, Shift A, and select 32 pixels between them. And also make sure to uncheck clip content if you find some of the senders on the text here are cut off. Cool. Make sure everything is aligned to the left, and we are ready to go. Now, I'm going to take all of this and position it 240 pixels from the section above. And now looking at this page, I realize that I actually forgot to do something. I forgot to add a very light background to the first few sections. to the first two sections, excuse me. So let me quickly fix that. I'm going to start by creating a rectangle, and I'm going to position that below the hero. Let's make that bigger. Like that, and like that, and like that. And let's resize this so that we have a padding here on the bottom, or space between the edge and these elements, of 120 pixels. Now, here's another quick tip and a very helpful keyboard shortcut. Remember when I told you about the nudging tools, where you can use the keyboard arrows to move an element left, right, top, and bottom? Now, if you press Command on a Mac or Control on Windows, you can resize an element. So for example, if I hold down Command and I press the arrow down key, and pay close attention here, I can actually resize this from the keyboard. And if I also hold down Shift, I can resize it even faster. The same goes for width. So Command or Control, and then left and right arrows allows me to change the width of an element. And again, if I hold down Shift, I can change these values in increments of 10 compared to increments of 1 with just the Command or Control key pressed. So that's how you can resize an element using your keyboard. Right, so back to this bit, we need to resize this so that we have 120 pixels of padding on the bottom, just like that. And now let's use a nice background color. I could use a gray, like a very light gray, maybe gray 10 from here, or I can use the primary 10. So let's do that. So primary 10%. And if I think that's a little bit too much, I can go even lower, 5%. And I think actually that's the value that I'm going to keep it at, 5%. And this creates a nice separation between this section here and this section here. So now let's select all of these and let's push them down again until we get to 240% from this top element. Cool. Now let's style these elements. For all of these, we're going to be using the following styles: Brandon Grotesque, regular, and I'm going to use the exact same style that we have here. So copy paste, copy properties, paste properties. The only difference is I'm going to use 80% on the color instead of 60%. And also let's fix the capitalization here. So now what I'm going to do is create card elements from these text elements. Really easy to do that. Select an element, Shift A to add auto layout, and then select vertical, 32 horizontal padding, 64 vertical padding, 0 here. We can add a fill as white, and we can also add a drop shadow. So the drop shadow is going to be like this: 30 for blur, 0x, 20y, and then we're going to use this color, our main gray 25%, as the shadow color. And also let's add a border radius of 8 pixels. Now what I can do is I can set the text to align to the center, and I can resize this so that it spans 3 columns. And also, we're going to resize this one until we get to the desired padding here on the left. All right, so now it's just a rinse and repeat for the other 2 elements. So let's select all of them and align them to the center. Let's set their width to 216 pixels. And then we'll do Shift A, Shift A, Shift A, select this frame, copy properties, select these frames, paste properties. Pretty cool, right? Now, let's align these with our text. We're going to use a spacing of 64 between these elements. And let's position them like so. I'm going to use 32 pixels of spacing between these elements. And now that we see all of them together, we notice that this one is smaller than the rest. So we need to set a fixed width for it. Since we have auto layout added, we need to switch the orientation to vertical so that we can then select fixed width instead of auto width, like so. So now I can resize this to any value I need. So now to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to push them down 32 pixels. So holding down Shift and pressing the down arrow key, 1, 2, 3, I let go of Shift, 1, 2. And now I have a 32 pixel gap from the top of this to the top of this. So now we can go ahead and group these up. And we can go ahead and Shift A on these. And make sure to uncheck clip content. And this part is now done. So to make this section a bit more interesting, we'll do 2 more things. One is we're going to add some imagery. So for that, I'm actually going to move this entire section to the right, and I'm going to go back to my starter kit. I'm going to select placeholder images, and I'm going to select the iPad Pro and the iPhone 7. So drag and drop into my page. Now these are a little bit too big right now, so let's resize them. So I'm going to resize this to about, I don't know, 700. And then I'm going to resize this phone to about, I don't know, half that value to 350. I don't know the exact ratio between these 2 elements, but at a glance, this looks about right. So what I'm going to do now is put the iPhone on top of the iPad. So they look something like this. And then I'm going to push this down 10, 20, 30, 1, 2, so 32 pixels. I'm going to select both of these, Command G to group them, and then I'm going to align the edge of the iPhone with the edge of this column. And the idea is to leave this column here blank. And now select these 2, select this, align top. And finally, the last thing I want to do is select this image of the iPad and add drop shadow, select the iPhone and do the same. And this just creates a little bit of depth. Pretty cool. Now, finally, what I want to do is add some stripes here. And if you're wondering how I got the inspiration for this design with, the angles and stuff, well, I had a look at the project brief where the client told us that, hey, here are a few websites that we like, and one of them is Stripe. And if you haven't seen the Stripe website, well, it's very cool. It looks something like this. So you can see that I got a lot of inspiration from here with the bold colors, with the angles, with how this image section here is presented. And because I started using this diagonal or this angled approach, I'm going to use it in the rest of the page. So I'm going to start by creating a rectangle about this big, and I'm going to set its rotation to 16 degrees. And then I'm going to position it somewhere around here so that it passes just through the list of features. Now I'm going to bring it under this frame like so, and I'm going to add a gradient to it. So to add a gradient, we can do it in two different ways. We can select it, go to Fill, select a linear, a radial, an angular, a diamond gradient, whatever, but linear is usually what you would go for. And then just, pick the colors manually. But I actually have a great resource for you, and that's called Web Gradients. You can find it at webgradients.com, and it basically shows you a list of pre-made gradients. Pretty cool, right? You can see the start and finish colors, and you can even copy CSS code for it. Now, what's nice about this this website is that it also offers a plugin for Figma. So that plugin is called Web Gradients. Go ahead and install it just like any other plugin. And all you have to do is select the shape that you want to use the gradient on, and then click on this list. And the plugin automatically fills in the gradient for you. How cool is that? So it's really up to you, to your preference, what kind of gradients you want to use here. I'm going to choose this one, Rainy Asheville. And I'm just going to position this here for now. And I'm going to change its layer opacity to 10%. I'm doing that because I'm going to add another gradient. I'm going to change its angle to maybe 12 degrees. Yeah, and just move it up something like this. And for that, I'm going to use a darker gradient, maybe something with different colors, something like that. And you can play around with the opacity on this one. Maybe let's go a little bit higher, 20%. Let's go 20% on this one as well. Right? So it's just a detail, this or these two stripes, but I think they make all the difference. And they look just fabulous with the rest of the elements. And then just select everything, Command G to group everything up, and we'll call these features 2. All right, so the second section for features is done. Now it's your turn to put your own spin on it. And you can do that in so many different ways. You can use different gradients for those two stripes. You can swap the image with the written content. You can use a different style for those white cards. You can do lots of things. So go ahead and experiment and make sure to post your project in the project gallery so we can all have a look. With that said, we are now ready to move on to the next section. And after a quick glance over the wireframe, we can see that that section is a small call to action. We'll do that in the next lesson, so I'll see you there.